Cold mountain air. November rain turning to sleet against limestone ridges. The kind of weather that makes bones ache and old wounds remember themselves. A single figure stands motionless on the peak, silhouetted against a sky the color of gunmetal. Below, in the valley where fog pools like dirty water, forward operating base sentinel burns. 14 bodies, maybe more. The smoke rises in thick black columns that the wind cannot quite disperse. Radio static crackles from a shattered handset lying in the mud. Voices calling for backup that will never come. Calling for answers no one wants to give. The figure's hands are covered in blood. Fresh blood. American blood. Later, they would ask the question everyone asks when the counting is done, and the medals are being polished for the cameras. Could you have stopped it? Wrong question entirely. They should have asked something far more terrifying. Did you start it? The answer to that question sits in a cave 300 meters below, written in orders that technically do not exist, signed by men who officially are not there. But that answer comes later, 48 hours later to be precise. Right now, in the moment before everything fractures, the figure on the mountain is just a shadow. A ghost that has not decided yet whether to materialize or fade back into the darkness where ghosts belong. The choice gets made in the next 2 days. The choice that will turn soldiers against their own commanders. The choice that will make a hero out of a saboteur and a criminal out of a patriot. The choice that starts with a woman no one notices doing a job no one cares about. 48 hours earlier. Forward operating base sentinel squats in the Appalachian Highlands like something that grew there instead of being built. Razor wire and sandbags. Prefab structures trying to pass for permanence. Guard towers manned by kids who joined up thinking Afghanistan was over and got surprised when the war just moved coordinates. The base sits astride 3 mountain passes, which makes it strategically valuable in the kind of chess game that generals play with topographic maps and satellite imagery. Control the passes, control the region. Control the region, control the supply lines that keep insurgent cells alive in the mountains. Or so the theory goes. Sarah Mackenzie Corwin does not care much about strategic theory anymore. She cares about inventory spreadsheets and ammunition counts and making sure the right bullets get shipped to the right weapons before some 19-year-old kid finds out the hard way that 7.62 NATO does not fit in a rifle chambered for 5.56. Supply Depot 7, the least glamorous posting on a base that is not exactly swimming in glamour to begin with. Rows of metal shelving loaded with crates. Fluorescent lights that hum like dental drills. Concrete floor that holds the cold like a grudge. Corwin sits at a desk that has seen better decades, clicking through database entries with the mechanical precision of someone who has done this exact task roughly 10,000 times before. 31 years old, compact frame, the kind of build that comes from discipline rather than genetics. Brown hair pulled back so tight it could be tactical. Eyes that focus on computer screens but never quite seem to absorb what they are looking at. The other personnel on base have opinions about Corwin. They share them in mess halls and during smoke breaks, the way soldiers always do when someone does not quite fit the expected profile. Used to be something, apparently. Rangers, maybe. Or something more classified than that. But now she is supply chain, bean counter. The kind of person who matters only when she screws up and the wrong equipment arrives at the wrong time. Nobody knows why she transferred out of whatever unit she came from. Nobody asks. In the military, when someone's record has that many redacted sections, you learn not to ask questions. You learn to assume the answers are either classified or too ugly for polite conversation. Corwin does not mind the assumptions. Being underestimated is sometimes the most valuable asset an operator can have. The radio on her desk crackles to life. 3 p.m. exactly. The Tactical Operations Center always runs on time, whatever else might be falling apart. Contact. Viper 6, this is TOC. Operation Iron Hammer is green lit. Wheels up 0600 tomorrow. Confirm receipt. Static, then a male voice, confident and clipped. Viper 6 copies. Green light confirmed. We will bring you back some souvenirs. The TOC operator does not laugh at the joke. Nobody laughs at jokes anymore. Not after the last 3 missions came back with casualty counts instead of actionable intelligence. Roger Viper 6. Weather looks clear. Intel confidence is 87%. Threat assessment moderate. Standard rules of engagement apply. Corwin's hand freezes over the keyboard, just for a fraction of a second. Anyone watching closely would catch it. The way her index finger hovers over the enter key. the way her jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. Then the moment passes. She goes back to typing. Ammunition requisition forms. Boring work for boring people. Except Sarah Corwin is a great many things, and boring has never been one of them. The afternoon drags through its predictable rhythms. Supply requisitions, inventory audits. A corporal from maintenance asking about replacement parts for a generator that should have been replaced 2 administrations ago. Corwin processes it all with the efficient boredom of someone performing a role they have perfected through repetition. At 1600 hours, Viper 6 conducts final equipment checks in the vehicle bay. Corwin watches from her office window, notepad in hand like she is doing inventory counts. Really, she is studying patterns. Who carries what? Who checks what? Which vehicle has which equipment configuration? Commander Jake Briggs runs his team with the disciplined intensity of a man who understands that attention to detail is what keeps soldiers alive. 42 years old, gray creeping into his temples, scar across his left cheek from an IED in Kandahar that killed his driver and left him with a permanent reminder that luck is fickle and precious. He moves between the 3 Humvees, checking weapons mounts, communications gear, medical supplies, speaking to each soldier individually, building confidence, establishing rhythm, the pre-mission ritual that transforms a collection of individuals into a functioning combat unit. Lieutenant Maya Shelton is his second in command, 29 years old. MIT graduate who could have been making 6 figures in Silicon Valley, but chose military intelligence instead because, as she once told someone in the mess hall, algorithms are interesting, but people are complicated, and complicated is more fun. She has a tablet in hand, running through digital checklists while simultaneously managing 3 different radio frequencies and keeping mental track of approximately 15 variables that could turn this mission from routine to catastrophic. The enlisted personnel are younger. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, 32, combat veteran with 2 deployments, and the kind of steady competence that comes from surviving situations where competence was the only thing standing between you and a flag-draped coffin. Corporal Chen, 25, communications specialist who can make radios work in conditions that would baffle most engineers. Private First Class Hayes, 22, newest member of the team, still wearing the expression of someone who thinks war is going to be like the recruitment videos. Corwin watches them prepare, watches the camaraderie and the focus and the underlying current of nervousness that every soldier feels before rolling outside the wire. These are professionals, good at their jobs, trusting their equipment and their training and their leaders. Trusting intelligence that tells them tomorrow's mission is 87% solid. Intelligence that Corwin knows is wrong, knows in her bones is wrong, even though she cannot articulate how she knows or why the certainty feels like cold water running down her spine. She returns to her desk, opens her personal laptop, the one that technically violates about 6 different security protocols, but that everyone in supply has because the official systems are garbage, and sometimes you need tools that actually work. Navigates through the base network using credentials that should not function at her clearance level, but do anyway because someone somewhere decided she needed access and never bothered updating the permission matrices when she transferred to supply. Operation Iron Hammer. The file loads. She has seen it before, briefly during the TOC transmission. Now she reads it completely. Every word, every footnote, every intelligence assessment and risk calculation. Target, grid coordinates, November Kilo 7749. Suspected insurgent weapons cache. Intelligence sourced from local human asset. Reliability rating Charlie 3. Confidence level 87% based on cross-referencing with SIGINT intercepts and drone surveillance showing increased activity in target area by over past 72 hours. Expected resistance, light to moderate. Estimated 4 to 8 insurgent personnel providing security. Standard small arms. Possible crew-served weapons but no indication of anti-armor capability. Mission profile. Pre-dawn insertion via ground vehicles. Establish overwatch positions. Conduct tactical search of suspected cache location. Secure any weapons or intelligence materials. Extract before noon local time to avoid civilian traffic patterns and maximize operational security. Risk assessment. Acceptable. Well within established parameters for squad-level operations. Everything about it reads legitimate. Professional. The kind of planning that goes into hundreds of operations every month across dozens of forward operating bases. Except something is wrong. Something Corwin cannot name but can feel. The way you can feel someone watching you from across a crowded room, even though you have not seen them yet. She screenshots the mission brief, encrypts it with software that did not come from official channels, sends it to an email address that resolves to a server in a country that does not officially cooperate with American intelligence. Subject line, confirm. She sits back, stares at the screen, realizes she is holding her breath. The reply comes in 30 seconds, far too fast for the message to have traveled anywhere that far, which means the recipient is close, very close. Maybe on this base, maybe in this building. One word, confirmed. Second word, proceed. Corwin closes the laptop. Her hands are shaking slightly. She makes them stop through sheer force of will. In sniper school, they teach you breath control and muscle discipline and the art of making your body obey your mind, even when your mind is screaming that this is insane and you should abort immediately. She has not needed those skills in 4 years. Apparently, the training stays installed even when you stop using it. She stands, walks to the supply cage where the high-value items live behind chain link and serious padlocks, returns to her desk, retrieves a heavy-duty bolt cutter from the tool cabinet, the kind designed for cutting hardened steel chains when you need to get through security barriers in a hurry. Tests the weight, adequate. Night comes to the Appalachians the way it always does, sudden and complete. No gentle twilight here. The sun drops behind the western ridge, and darkness floods the valleys like water finding its level. Most of the base winds down. Soldiers head to the mess for dinner that tastes like every other military dinner in every other outpost in every other conflict. Meatloaf that might be turkey. Potatoes that definitely came from a box. Coffee strong enough to strip paint. Corwin eats alone as usual. Sits in the corner with a paperback that has been read so many times the spine has given up. Mystery novel. Something about a detective in Seattle. She is on page 83, same page she has been on for 2 weeks. Not actually reading, just holding the book like camouflage. She watches Viper 6 at their table across the mess hall, Briggs talking through final mission details, Shelton taking notes on her ever-present tablet, Rodriguez telling some story that makes the others laugh, Hayes listening with the intense attention of someone trying to absorb everything because he does not know yet which details will matter and which will not. They look confident, ready, the kind of ready that comes from training and experience and trust in the system that feeds them intelligence and sends them into harm's way. Corwin feels something twist in her chest. These are good people, professionals doing a hard job in difficult conditions. They deserve accurate intelligence. They deserve commanders who do not send them into situations based on information that might be compromised or manipulated or flat out wrong. They deserve better than whatever is about to happen. 2,200 hours. The depot is supposed to be locked down. Corwin has the keys because someone has to. And the people who decide these things figured supply personnel do not need as much supervision as combat troops. They figured wrong. She unlocks the side entrance, the one that does not face the guard towers. Leaves her ID badge on the desk where it should be. Walks between rows of shelving to the back corner, where the high-value items live behind chain link and padlocks. The laptop comes out of her bag. Personal device, not military issue. Technically a violation of security protocols. Nobody has ever checked. She connects to the base network through a port that maintenance uses and everyone forgets about. Navigates to the classified server with credentials that should not work for someone at her clearance level. They work anyway. She pulls up the full intelligence package for Operation Iron Hammer. Not just the mission brief, everything. Source documents, human contact reports, SIGINT intercepts, drone surveillance footage, risk assessments from 3 different analytical teams. Reads it all, absorbs it, looks for patterns that do not fit, inconsistencies that might indicate problems, finds them. The human source is single-threaded, no corroboration from other assets. The SIGINT intercepts are ambiguous, could indicate weapons cache activity, could also indicate a dozen other things. The drone surveillance shows increased foot traffic, but no evidence of weapons movement or cache construction. 87% confidence is optimistic. Charitable assessment would put it at 60%. Realistic assessment would put it at 40%. This is not a solid operation. This is a maybe operation being sold as a definitely operation. Question is why? Why push a marginal mission as high confidence? Why send Viper 6 into a situation that might be legitimate or might be a dry hole or might be something worse. Corwin does not have answers, just has the sick certainty that something is very wrong and she is somehow part of whatever wrongness is unfolding. She screenshots additional documents, encrypts them, sends them to the same email address as before. This time she types a question. What is really happening? The response comes immediately. You know what you need to do. Trust your training. She stares at the message. Trust your training. The phrase echoes in her head in a voice she has not heard in 4 years. Instructor voice. Command voice. The voice of Colonel David Hale teaching sniper school to a 22-year-old private who had good scores and no direction. Hale's voice explaining that shooting is not about pulling triggers. It is about making decisions, about reading situations, about understanding that sometimes the best shot is the one you do not take, and sometimes the worst decision is following orders that do not make tactical sense. Corwin closes the laptop, sits in the darkness between the shelves, breathing slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way they teach you in sniper school when you need to drop your heart rate before a shot that has to count. She stands, walks to the tool cabinet. The bolt cutter feels heavier now. Heavier because she knows what using it means. Means crossing a line from observer to actor. Means making a choice that cannot be unmade. The weapons locker is K-7, high security, or what passes for it in a supply depot. Electronic lock plus a hardened steel chain. The electronics respond to 3 authorization codes. Corwin has none of them. The bolt cutter goes through the chain in 2 cuts, loud enough that anyone within 20 meters would hear. But it is 22:30 now, and the guards are changing shift, and in the chaos of handover, nobody is paying attention to sounds from the supply depot. Inside the locker, standard loadout for specialized personnel, M4 carbines, M249 squad automatic weapons, grenade launchers, and the grenades to feed them. And in the back corner, in a hard case with foam padding, M2010 enhanced sniper rifle, chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum. Effective range, 1,200 meters in good conditions. Farther if the shooter knows what they are doing. Corwin knows what she is doing. She has been doing it since she was 23 years old, and a ranger instructor told her she had the steadiest hands he had seen in 15 years of teaching people to kill from distances where you could not hear them scream. The rifle comes out of the case like an old friend being greeted. Familiar weight, perfect balance, customized in ways that matter. Trigger pull reduced to exactly 2.5 pounds. Scope mounted at precisely the height that matches her cheekbone structure. Bipod legs that deploy with a specific click she could recognize blindfolded. She runs her hand along the barrel. Cold metal, precision engineering. A tool designed for one purpose, executed with excellence. In the right hands, this rifle can change outcomes, can save lives or end them depending on who is making the decisions about where it points. 40 rounds of match-grade ammunition, each round loaded to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch, each one capable of putting a hole through a human skull at 1,000 meters, assuming wind and weather cooperate. She loads a magazine, 20 rounds, slides it home. The click of metal meeting metal is satisfying in a way that civilian life can never quite replicate. Suppressor, unregistered and technically illegal even for military use. Night vision optics, Generation 3, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. Ghillie suit that smells like dirt and pine needles because that is what it is made from. She does not take a radio. Radios can be tracked, triangulated, intercepted. Radios mean someone else knows where you are and what you are saying. She takes a compass, mechanical, no batteries, no electronics, just magnetism and honest metal. The kind of tool that works when everything else fails. She takes a paper map, folded to show the terrain between here and Grid November, Kilo 7749. She takes a knife, because you always take a knife. She takes water and energy and first aid supplies and all the small things that separate professionals from amateurs. And then she walks out of the depot, locking the door behind her with the keys that prove she was never there. The base perimeter is razor wire and motion sensors and patrol schedules that follow a pattern because humans don't always follow patterns. Corwin spent 3 months working supply, 3 months watching, learning when the eastern gate gets checked and when it does not, learning where the sensors have blind spots because the contractor who installed them cut corners to save money. She crosses the wire at 01:15 during the 17-minute window between patrols, does not cut it, does not climb it, Finds the gap where the fence does not quite meet the ground because the terrain slopes and the installers got lazy. Slides through like smoke, gone before the next patrol swings past. 4 kilometers of Appalachian forest separate the base from Eagle's Nest Ridge. 4 kilometers of terrain that looks gentle on maps and tries to kill you in person. Roots that grab ankles, streams that hide under leaf litter. Slopes that seem manageable until you are halfway up and realize your calves are screaming and your lungs cannot quite get enough air. Corwin moves through it like water finding downhill, does not fight the terrain, works with it, steps where the ground is solid, avoids where it is not, breathes in rhythm with her footfalls, an old meditation technique that turns hiking into something close to prayer. The forest at night is a different world. Darkness absolute except where her night vision turns it into green-tinged clarity. Every sound amplified, every movement potentially threat or harmless wildlife, and you have to decide which without hesitation, because hesitation gets you killed. A deer crashes through undergrowth 50 meters to her left. She tracks it automatically, rifle coming up, scope acquiring target, sees the deer, lowers the rifle, moves on. Training never quite leaves you. The reflexes stay installed, even when you spend 4 years trying to forget you ever had them. She reaches the ridge at 0430, an hour before dawn, an hour before Viper 6 rolls out of base in their Humvees, loaded with confidence and bad intelligence. Eagle's Nest Ridge overlooks Route 7, the only road that leads from Sentinel to Grid November, Kilo 7749. 2 lanes of cracked asphalt that winds through valleys like a snake with arthritis. Impossible to bypass unless you are on foot and do not mind adding 6 hours to your travel time. Viper 6 will not be on foot. They will be in vehicles because modern soldiers do not walk when they can ride, and because the brass thinks speed matters more than stealth. Corwin sets up her position 300 meters back from the road, in a cluster of boulders that offer concealment in a perfect shooting angle. Range to the road, 800 meters. Well within her capability, almost insultingly easy if she wanted to think about it that way. She does not assemble the rifle yet. Too early. Instead, she conducts a full area scan, looking for threats, looking for other observers, looking for anything that does not belong. Finds nothing. Just forest and rock and the road snaking through the valley below. She eats an energy bar that tastes like sawdust and good intentions. Drinks water from a bladder that has been in her pack long enough to take on the flavor of plastic. Watches the eastern horizon for the first hint of dawn. And thinks about the question nobody ever quite asks directly. Why are you here, Sarah Corwin? What are you actually doing on this ridge with a rifle that is not yours and orders you do not remember receiving? The answer should be simple. Soldiers follow orders. That is the basic compact. Someone with more rank and better information tells you what needs doing, and you do it. Except Corwin left the Rangers 4 years ago specifically because she got tired of following orders that turned people into corpses and corpses into statistics and statistics into PowerPoint slides for officers who never left the wire. She transferred to supply. Safe, boring, no moral complexity in counting bullets that other people fire. And yet here she is, on a ridge, with a rifle, preparing to do something that will definitely involve moral complexity and possibly involve prison time if anyone ever connects the dots. A memory surfaces, unwanted but persistent. Syria 4 years ago. Different mountains but the same moral calculations. Young man in her scope, maybe 25. Civilian clothes but carrying an AK pattern rifle with the easy familiarity of someone who has used it before. Intel said he was a weapons facilitator, said he was high-value target, said eliminating him would disrupt supply networks and save American lives downstream. Corwin had the shot, perfect conditions, 600 meters, minimal wind, target stationary while talking on a phone. She hesitated, watched him through the scope, saw him laugh at something whoever was on the phone said, saw him check his watch, saw him look at the sky like he was judging weather. Human gestures, the kind that remind you the person in your crosshairs is not a target, is a person with people who care about them and plans for later in a future that extends beyond the next 30 seconds. Radio crackled. Hale's voice. You have the shot, Corwin. Execute. The order was clear. The authority was legitimate. The intelligence said this man deserved to die. She pulled the trigger, watched through the scope as the man fell, watched as people ran to him, watched as they tried to save him and failed because her shot placement was professional and certain. Found out 3 days later that the intelligence was wrong. The man was not a weapons facilitator, was a doctor who treated anyone who needed treatment regardless of which side they claimed. The rifle was for personal protection in a region where personal protection was necessary for survival. Hale told her it was not her fault, told her she followed orders based on information provided, told her the system failed, not her. But the system had used her hands to pull the trigger, had used her training to ensure the shot was fatal, had turned her into the instrument of someone else's bad information. She requested transfer 2 weeks later. Hale approved it without argument. Maybe he understood. Maybe he just knew that operators who start questioning orders are liabilities waiting to happen. The memory fades. Dawn is breaking over the eastern mountains. Light floods the valleys, cold and clean. Beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are. Viper 6's convoy appears at 0612. 3 Humvees, sand-colored, bristling with antennae and weapons, rolling at 40 kilometers per hour, which is fast for this road, but not reckless. Professional pace. Corwin watches them through the rifle scope, sees faces she recognizes from the mess hall. Commander Briggs in the lead vehicle, jaw set in that expression of focused determination. Lieutenant Shelton in the second vehicle, studying her tablet, probably running through checklists. Rodriguez driving the third vehicle with the casual competence of someone who has driven worse roads under worse conditions. Chen manning communications. Hayes in the gunner position, scanning sectors with the hyper-alertness of someone on their first real operation. Young faces, confident faces. The kind of faces that belong to people who think they understand how this day is going to unfold. They are wrong. Corwin tracks the convoy through her scope, finger resting alongside the trigger guard. Controlled breathing, heart rate dropping. The meditative state where time seems to stretch and the world reduces to crosshairs and calculations. But she does not fire. Not yet. Because 3 kilometers to the east, moving on a parallel course through terrain the Americans have not scouted, another convoy is advancing. 6 vehicles. Technical trucks, the kind with machine guns welded to the beds. 30 fighters, maybe more. Moving with the kind of coordination that suggests professional training, not amateur enthusiasm. Insurgent forces, well-armed, well-led, heading directly toward the same coordinates that Viper 6 thinks they own exclusively. Corwin's scope moves between the 2 convoys. American, insurgent, American, insurgent. The math is brutal and simple. Viper 6, 5 shooters, good training, limited heavy weapons. Insurgent force, 30-plus fighters, multiple machine guns, home terrain advantage. If both forces reach November Kilo 7749 at the same time, Viper 6 dies, all of them. Quickly if they are lucky, slowly if they are not. And Sarah Corwin, watching from a ridge with a rifle she stole and orders she does not remember, has maybe 3 minutes to decide whose side she is actually on. The bolt slides home with the smooth mechanical certainty of precision engineering. Round chambered, safety off. Scope adjusted for range and the light crosswind coming from the northwest. Target acquired. Lead vehicle, Humvee number 2. Not the engine block, not the crew, the tire. Front passenger side. Non-lethal, disruptive. The kind of shot that stops a convoy without creating casualties. Corwin's finger moves to the trigger. 2.5 pounds of pressure. That is all it takes. 2.5 pounds between now and whatever comes after. She thinks about the last time she fired a weapon in anger. 4 years ago. Different continent. Different war that was really the same war with a different flag. She thinks about the face in her scope that day. Young face, scared face, the face of someone who maybe deserved to live, but definitely deserved to, according to the rules of engagement, in the mission parameters, in the orders that came down from people who were not there. She thinks about the moment after the shot, the way the face stopped being a face and started being evidence of a decision she could never unmake. She thinks about why she left, why she chose supply depots and inventory spreadsheets in a life where the hardest decision was whether to reorder ammunition in bulk or wait for next quarter's budget allocation. And then she stops thinking entirely. Because thinking is what operators do before they are trained, what they do after they are broken, in between, in that golden window where you are good enough to matter and not yet damaged enough to quit. You do not think. You just execute. The rifle fires with a sound like a champagne cork in a cathedral. Suppressed but not silent. Physics does not allow silent. Just quiet enough that 800 meters away, over engine noise and radio chatter, the sound will not register as hostile. 800 meters downrange, the front passenger tire of Humvee number 2 explodes. Rubber shreds. The vehicle lurches right. The driver corrects, overcorrects. The convoy grinds to a halt in the kind of organized chaos that happens when training meets surprise. Radio chatter erupts. Corwin cannot hear the words, but she can imagine them. Contact, sniper, positions, all the things that combat troops shout when the situation deviates from the plan. She is already moving. Bolt action smooth. Brass casing collected because you never leave evidence. 30 seconds to displace 200 meters to an alternate firing position. Standard counter sniper protocol, fire and move. Fire and move. Never shoot twice from the same place unless you want to mine from the same place. The second shot comes from a different angle, different range. Targets Humvee number 1. Not the tire this time, the fuel tank. Diesel does not explode like gasoline. Hollywood gets that wrong. But it does leak. And a Humvee leaking fuel is a Humvee that is going exactly nowhere until someone patches the tank or finds a replacement vehicle. Shot number 2 punches through the tank with a sound like a hammer hitting a tin can. Fuel starts pouring onto the road. The smell hits the convoy before they understand what happened. Viper 6 is now immobilized. 3 vehicles, 2 disabled. Not enough working transportation to continue the mission with full personnel. Briggs is screaming into the radio. Corwin can see it through the scope, face red, veins standing out on his neck. The universal body language of a commander whose day just went sideways. TOC. This is Viper 6. We are under fire. Repeat. Under fire. Sniper contact. 2 vehicles disabled, requesting immediate air support. The response comes crackling back. Negative Viper 6. All air assets committed to Operations North Sector. You are authorized to defend in place and assess threat. Defend in place. The phrase that means you are on your own and good luck with that. Lieutenant Shelton exits her vehicle, moving low and fast. Tactical competence. She is not panicking. She is analyzing, studying the bullet holes, examining the angles. Corwin watches her through the scope, sees the moment Shelton understands. Shelton pulls out a tablet, starts running calculations, triangulating shooter position based on impact angles and damage patterns. She is good, very good. In another minute, she will have narrowed Corwin's position down to a 50-meter radius. Time to move. But first, one more shot. Because the insurgent convoy 3 kilometers east has stopped moving. They heard the gunfire. They are waiting, trying to figure out if this is opportunity or trap. Their commander is smart, does not rush, does not retreat, sends scouts forward to assess. Corwin tracks one of the scouts through her scope. Young man, maybe 25, a K-pattern rifle held with reasonable competence. Moving through trees with the cautious grace of someone who has survived long enough to learn caution. She could kill him, easy shot, 400 meters, minimal win, stationary target. She does not, because killing him does not solve the problem. It escalates the problem. Dead insurgent equals return fire, equals Viper 6 caught in crossfire. They cannot win. The third shot goes high and wide, intentionally cracks through branches 50 meters above the scout's head. The scout hits the dirt, crawls backward, reports to his commander that the American sniper is active and aggressive. The insurgent convoy makes a decision, falls back, chooses survival over engagement. They will find another route, another day, another target. But not today, not here. Corwin lowers the rifle, watches the insurgent vehicles disappear into the tree line, watches Viper 6 scrambling to secure their disabled Humvees, watches Shelton examining the bullet holes with the focused intensity of someone who understands that the pattern matters more than the damage. Radio chatter continues. Briggs is making decisions. Cannot continue to objective with compromised transportation. Cannot remain static in potential kill zone. Only logical choice, return to base. Abort mission, file incident report. Try again another day with better luck. Viper 6 begins turning around. Slowly, professionally, but definitely turning around. Mission accomplished. Whatever the mission actually was, Corwin packs her rifle with the methodical care of someone who has done this 10,000 times. Every movement economical, nothing wasted, ghillie suit rolled tight, ammunition counted, brass casings triple checked, because missing one means leaving evidence, and evidence means questions, and questions mean prison cells. She begins the 4-kilometer hike back towards Sentinel. Different route than the approach. Never use the same path twice. Basic fieldcraft. The burner phone in her pocket vibrates. Once. The prearranged signal that means someone wants contact. She pulls it out. Cheap flip phone, the kind you buy at gas stations with cash. No GPS, no tracking, no connection to anything that matters. One text message. Mission parameters updated. Stand by for phase 2. Phase 2, which implies there was a phase 1, which implies a larger operation, which implies Corwin is a piece on a chessboard and someone else is moving the pieces. She stares at the message for 10 seconds, then deletes it, removes the SIM card, breaks it in half, scatters the pieces in different directions. Phones can be tracked even when they are off. SIM cards hold data even when they are deleted. The only secure phone is a phone that no longer exists. 3 kilometers from Sentinel, Corwin's instincts start screaming. Something wrong, cannot identify what, just wrong. She stops, crouches, scans the terrain. Nothing visible, nothing audible except wind and birds and the distant sound of a helicopter that might be friendly or might not be. Then she sees it. Smoke, rising from the direction of Sentinel. Too much smoke to be a cook fire or a burn barrel. Black smoke, the kind that comes from burning fuel and burning structures and burning things that should not burn. She runs, 4 years removed from active combat operations. 4 years of supply depot routine and soft living. But the body remembers. Muscle memory kicks in. She covers the last 3 kilometers in 18 minutes, which would have impressed her 25-year-old self and leaves her 31-year-old self gasping. She crests the final ridge, looks down at forward operating base Sentinel. The base is under attack. 6 technical trucks in a semicircle around the eastern perimeter. Heavy machine gun fire raking the guard towers. RPG strikes against the motor pool. Mortar rounds falling with the steady rhythm of professional targeting. 30-plus insurgent fighters. The same force that was heading toward November Kilo 7749. The same force that turned back after Corwin's warning shots. They did not go home. They changed targets. They are hitting Sentinel. The base garrison is 12 personnel, mechanics, cooks, supply clerks, the absolute minimum staff required to keep a forward operating base functioning while the actual combat troops are outrunning missions. 12 defenders against 30 attackers. The math is worse than bad. The math is apocalyptic. Corwin watches through her rifle scope, sees Captain Linda Vasquez trying to coordinate defensive fire from behind a sandbag wall that is already half collapsed. Sees young PFC Martinez firing an M4 he probably qualified on once a year and never seriously thought he would use. Sees people dying. The burner phone vibrates again. Different phone this time. The backup. The one she was not supposed to use except for absolute emergencies. She answers. Male voice. Deep. Calm. The kind of calm that comes from practice rather than nature. Corwin. She does not respond. Lets the silence ask the question. The voice continues, you are watching Sentinel. Statement, not question. Which means someone else is watching. Someone with Overwatch. Someone with sensors or drones or assets she cannot see. Yes, Corwin says finally. The voice pauses, then, can you stop them? Corwin does the math. 30 attackers, 800-meter range, elevated position, adequate ammunition, surprise advantage. Maybe, she says. Depends how many I need to kill. The voice goes quiet for 3 seconds. When it speaks again, the tone has changed. Harder, colder. You know what this is, Corwin. You know why you are there. Do not interfere. Understanding hits like a punch to the gut. This is the mission. Not stopping Viper 6, not protecting them. This, Sentinel burning, Americans dying, this is what someone planned. The voice continues. You have your orders. Maintain position, observe, report. And if I do not, Corwin asks, then you are compromised. And we clean up compromise assets. The line goes dead. Corwin stares at the phone, then at Sentinel, then back at the phone. 4 years ago, she followed orders that made sense at the time and seemed reasonable from the perspective of people who were not bleeding in the dirt. Those orders got good people killed. Those orders made her wake up at 3 a.m. for months afterward, replaying decisions she could not unmake. She swore after that, never again. Never again would she follow an order that turned allies into casualties for the sake of some strategic objective that looked good in briefing rooms and fell apart in reality. She transferred to the supply specifically to avoid these decisions, these moments, these choices between bad options and worse options. But the choices found her anyway. The choices always find you, no matter how far you run. Sarah Corwin removes the SIM card from the backup phone, crushes it under her boot heel, throws the phone itself into a ravine where it bounces off rocks and disappears into undergrowth. She assembles her rifle with movements so practiced they are basically autonomic. Loads a full magazine, 20 rounds, sets up prone position behind a fallen log that offers stability and concealment. Range to nearest insurgent position, 600 meters. Wind, negligible. Visibility, excellent. She acquires her first target, machine gunner, the biggest threat to Sentinel's defenders, the one causing the most casualties. For 4 years, she has been telling herself she is done with this, done with deciding who lives and who dies, done with the weight of it. Turns out 4 years is not long enough to forget how. Her finger finds the trigger, 2.5 pounds of pressure. Below her, Sentinel burns. Above her, storm clouds gather. Inside her, something that has been sleeping for 4 years opens its eyes. Sarah Corwin fires. The machine gunner drops. Clean headshot at 620 meters. The kind of shot that looks easy from this range in this position, but requires a level of skill that most designated marksmen never achieve. The insurgent force reacts with confusion. Their heavy fire support just disappeared. No sound of incoming shot. No muzzle flash visible. Just their gunner suddenly dead. Corwin works the bolt, smooth, mechanical, ejects the spent casing into her hand instead of letting it fall. Chambers the next round. Second target, RPG team setting up for another shot at the motor pool. Range 740 meters. She fires. The RPG gunner falls. His loader scrambles for the weapon. Falls too. 2 shots. 2 kills. 3 seconds between them. The insurgent commander is shouting now. Corwin can see him through the scope. Older man, gray beard, professional bearing. Former military probably. The kind of enemy that deserves respect even as you are killing him. He is pointing, not at Sentinel, at the ridgeline, at her general area. He has figured it out. American sniper, elevated position, somewhere west of the base. Smart man. Too smart to live if she wants the defenders to survive. Third target, the commander himself. Range 810 meters, harder shot. Moving target, partially concealed by vehicle. She waits, patient, breathing slow, heart rate controlled. The commander steps clear of the vehicle for just a moment. 2 seconds of exposure. Corwin fires. The commander falls. And the insurgent assault turns from coordinated to chaotic in the span of a single heartbeat. Leaderless forces make bad decisions. They bunch up instead of dispersing. They panic fire instead of aimed fire. They become targets instead of threats. Corwin exploits every mistake, shoots methodically, professionally, without emotion or hesitation. Each shot a decision made and executed and moved past. 7 minutes, 14 rounds fired, 14 insurgents dead or wounded critically enough to be out of the fight. The remaining attackers break, pile into their trucks, flee east into terrain where a lone sniper cannot follow. Sentinel's defenders do not chase. They do not have the strength. They just collapse behind their defenses, bleeding and exhausted and trying to process what just happened. Corwin does not celebrate, does not feel pride or satisfaction or any of the emotions that are supposed to come with successful combat operations. She feels tired, bone-deep tired, the kind of tired that comes from doing a thing you swore you would never do again. She secures her rifle, collects every single brass casing, checks the area for any evidence she existed. Then she starts walking back towards Sentinel. Not as a rescuer, not as a hero, just as someone who needs to understand what the hell she just participated in. Because 14 dead insurgents means 14 families without fathers or sons or brothers. Means 14 graves in a war that was supposed to be over 3 administrations ago. Means 14 decisions she will carry for however long she has left. And someone somewhere wanted this to happen. Someone gave her orders she does not remember receiving. Orders to delay Viper 6. Orders to let Sentinel burn. Orders she broke by pulling the trigger. The question that matters is not whether she made the right choice. Right and wrong stopped meaning much after the first 100 bodies. The question that matters is, what happens to operators who break orders from people powerful enough to make orders disappear? Sarah Corwin walks through Appalachian forest in the November cold, rifle on her back, blood on her conscience, and absolutely no idea whose side she is actually on. Behind her, smoke from Sentinel rises into gray sky. Ahead of her, something worse than smoke is waiting. She just does not know it yet. The walk back to Sentinel takes 40 minutes. Should take longer, but Sarah Corwin does not walk. She moves with the controlled urgency of someone who understands that time is a weapon, and right now it is pointed at her head. The rifle weighs exactly what it always weighs. 11.2 pounds unloaded, 13.8 with a full magazine. But somehow it feels heavier now than it did an hour ago. Heavier than it did 4 years ago when she was carrying it through terrain that wanted to kill her just as badly as the people shooting at her. Weight is not just physics. It is also memory. And right now, the rifle carries the memory of 14 men who woke up this morning expecting to go home tonight. She does not let herself think about their families, does not let herself imagine the knock on doors in villages she will never visit, does not let herself calculate the generational ripple of violence she just propagated. That way lies paralysis, and paralyzed operators die. The perimeter fence comes into view through the trees, still standing, mostly. RPG strikes took out 2 sections on the eastern side. Small arms fire chewed up the sandbag positions, but the core structure survived. Prefab buildings are ugly and graceless, but they are also surprisingly resilient when people start throwing explosives around. Corwin approaches from the west, the direction the attackers did not come from. Stays in the tree line. Observes. The base is cast with a thin veneer of procedure holding it together. Medics working on wounded, engineers assessing damage, someone trying to get communications re-established with higher headquarters. Captain Vasquez standing in the middle of it all, looking like someone who just realized her worst day on the job is still unfolding. No sign of Viper 6. They are still out there somewhere, nursing their disabled vehicles and their damaged pride. Corwin could walk in, present herself, claim she was on patrol when the attack happened. Nobody would question it hard. Not in this chaos, not when there are bigger problems than one supply clerk's whereabouts. But walking in means questions. Questions mean scrutiny. Scrutiny means someone eventually notices that Supply Depot 7's weapons locker is missing a very specific rifle. She needs a different approach. She needs to think, to process, to understand what game she is playing and who is moving the pieces. The cave system northeast of the base is something she discovered 2 months into her posting. The kind of discovery you make when you spend your off hours hiking instead of drinking or playing cards or whatever it is that normal soldiers do to pass time in remote postings. Limestone caves, common in this region. Most of them small and unremarkable, but one of them extends almost a quarter-mile underground with multiple entrances and enough space to hide equipment that should not exist. She has been using it as a cache site, keeping things that a supply clerk has no business possessing. Extra ammunition, encrypted communications gear, cash in 3 different currencies. The kind of paranoid preparation that makes sense only if you are expecting your life to fall apart someday. Today might be that day. The cave entrance is a crack in the rock face barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Invisible unless you know exactly where to look. Corwin slides inside, pulling her pack after her. Darkness swallows her whole. She does not need night vision for this. She has made this trip enough times to navigate by touch and memory. 40 meters in, turn right at the stalagmite that looks like a melted candle. 20 meters more. Duck under the low ceiling that will crack your skull if you forget it is there. Then the chamber opens up, 10 meters across, high enough to stand, dry enough to store sensitive equipment. She pulls out a red lens flashlight. Red light does not destroy night vision the way white light does. Old trick, still useful. The cache is where she left it. 3 waterproof cases, military grade, the kind that will survive being dropped from aircraft or submerged in rivers. She opens the first one. Cash, $50,000 in hundreds. Emergency fund, the kind of money that buys plane tickets to countries without extradition treaties or new identities from people who do not ask questions about old ones. She counts it. Force of habit. All there, whoever is running her has not discovered this cash, has not cleaned it out, which means either they do not know about it or they are leaving it in place for reasons of their own. Second case, communications equipment. Satellite phone, encrypted. Laptop with air-gapped hard drive. Portable router that can create mesh networks. USB drives containing things that would get her court-martialed if anyone knew she had them. She powers up the laptop. No network connection, just the files she has been collecting over the past 6 months. mission briefs she should not have access to, intelligence reports that never crossed her desk officially, personnel files for people she has never met, files she apparently downloaded but has no memory of downloading. The dates are damning, regular intervals, every 3 to 4 days for 6 months. She has been conducting intelligence collection operations in her own base and does not remember any of it. Third case, she stares at it for a long moment before opening it, because she knows what is inside. Put it there herself 3 months ago, hasn't looked at it since, or so she thought, but the dust pattern on the case suggests it has been opened recently, within the past week. She opens it, documents, orders, mission briefings, all of them classified at levels that require special clearances and signed in non-disclosure agreements in the kind of security protocols that make paranoia look like common sense. All of them addressed to her, all of them giving her instructions for operations she has absolutely no memory of conducting. She spreads them out on the cave floor, organizes them chronologically, starts reading. The earliest one is dated 6 months ago, 3 days after she arrived at Sentinel. Operation designation, Nightingale Protocol, Protocol. Objective, conduct passive surveillance of Viper 6 operational planning. Document mission briefs, equipment loadouts, personnel assignments. Upload encrypted reports to handler every 72 hours. She remembers none of this, but the upload logs on her laptop confirm she executed these orders perfectly. 48 intelligence reports over 6 months, all encrypted, all sent to an IP address that traces to nowhere. Second operation, Canary Protocol. Objective, identify and document all security vulnerabilities at forward operating base Sentinel. Assess defensive positions, guard rotation schedules, sensor blind spots, communications weak points. Provide comprehensive security audit to handler. Again, no memory, but the files exist. A 100-page document detailing every way someone could attack Sentinel successfully. Every weakness, every gap in coverage, every predictable pattern in the defense. Someone used that document to plan today's attack, used her intelligence to maximize casualties and minimize risk to the attacking force. She keeps reading. Each operation builds on the last, each one more invasive. More dangerous, more completely at odds with her conscious understanding of what she's been doing for 6 months. Sparrow Protocol. Obtain access credentials to base classified networks. Document information security procedures. Create backdoor access for handler remote operations. Raven Protocol. Conduct detailed terrain analysis of all approaches to grid. November Kilo 7749. Identify optimal ambush positions, sniper hides, vehicle kill zones. Falcon Protocol. Document Viper. 6 personnel psychological profiles. Identify decision-making patterns of Commander Briggs. Predict likely tactical responses to various hostile scenarios. And finally, dated 2 weeks ago, the operation she executed this morning without knowing she was executing it. Deception Protocol. Delay Viper 6 advance to grid November. Kilo 7749 by minimum 4 hours using non-lethal methods. Shoot to disable vehicles, not personnel. Force mission abort without creating casualties that would trigger investigation. Secondary objective. If forward operating base Sentinel comes under attack during Viper 6 delay window, provide covert fire support to prevent base being overrun. Maintain anonymity. 0 friendly casualties authorized for support operations. Tertiary objective. If operational security is compromised and exposure becomes imminent, eliminate witnesses and extract a safe house, Alpha 7 Charlie. The last line is circled in red ink. Someone's handwriting, not hers. Below the circle, a single word, authorize. Below that, a signature she recognizes from 100 training evaluations and mission debriefs from her time in the Rangers. Colonel David Hale. The name hits like a rifle round to the chest. Hale. The man who recruited her into sniper school when she was a 22-year-old private with good scores and no direction. The man who taught her that shooting is not about pulling triggers. It is about making decisions that keep your people alive and the enemy dead. The man she trusted more than her own judgment for 7 years. The man she thought she left behind when she transferred out of special operations. Apparently, Colonel Hale had different ideas about what leaving behind actually means. Corwin sits in the cave darkness, holding documents that prove she has been operated like a puppet for months. Proof that today's violence was not random, was not spontaneous, was orchestrated by someone who knew exactly which strings to pull and exactly when to pull them. But the documents do not explain how. How did Hale get inside her head? How did he make her execute complex operations and then forget them? How did he turn her into a weapon that activates on command and deactivates without memory? She finds the answer in a manila folder at the bottom of the case. Medical documents, pharmaceutical protocols, dosing schedules, chemical name, compound designation, XK-791, experimental memory suppression agent, developed under classified DoD research program. Effects: selective disruption of short-term memory consolidation while preserving long-term memory and operational skills. Administration: oral delivery via food or beverage. Effective dose: 0.5 milligrams per kilogram body weight. Duration of effect: approximately 6 hours. Subjects retain ability to execute complex tasks during effective period, but form no lasting memory of execution. Side effects: mild headaches, occasional temporal disorientation, rare cases of partial memory breakthrough, manifesting a sense of déjà vu or unexplained familiarity. She has had headaches, has had moments where time felt slippery, has had the persistent sense that she is forgetting something important but cannot identify what. Not side effects. Evidence of chemical warfare being conducted against her own neurons. The dosing schedule is attached. Precise. Professional. Someone has been putting this compound in her food or coffee or water for 6 months. Probably in the mess hall. Probably in something she consumes daily at predictable times. The thought makes her skin crawl. Someone has been drugging her, probably for months, turning her into a remote-controlled weapon that activates on command and forgets on schedule. Her hands are shaking. She makes them stop through force of will. Anger is useful but uncontrolled. Anger gets you killed. She needs to think tactically, needs to understand the full scope before deciding how to respond. She keeps reading, because stopping now means accepting ignorance, and ignorance in her current situation equals death. The pharmacological protocols include administration logs. Someone has been documenting every dose, every timing, every behavioral observation. The handwriting is meticulous, clinical, detached in the way that medical professionals are detached when documenting experiments on subjects who have not consented to being experimental subjects. But it is not Hale's handwriting. Someone else has been administering the drugs, someone with daily access to Corwin's food, someone close enough to observe behavioral changes. The realization hits cold and certain. Someone on base is working for Hale, someone she sees every day, someone she trusts enough to accept food from. She thinks through her routines, where she eats, who prepares the food, who has opportunity and access. The mess hall staff rotates, hard to maintain consistent dosing with rotating staff. But her coffee, she drinks coffee at her desk every morning, always from the same pot in the supply depot break room. Coffee that Private Martinez makes every morning at 0630 before the depot opens. Martinez, 20 years old, earnest kid who does everything by the book. Arrived at Sentinel 7 months ago, 1 month before Corwin. 1 month before someone needed an asset in place to ensure Corwin received her daily dose. The anger is back, colder this time, more focused. Martinez is not an enemy, is probably not even aware of what he is doing, is probably just following orders from someone who told him adding a supplement to Specialist Corwin's coffee was doctor's orders for a medical condition she prefers to keep private. But Martinez is a lever, is a connection point, is evidence that can be documented and used. Corwin photographs every document with a camera that does not connect to any network. Film camera, old technology, the kind that cannot be hacked or traced or remotely accessed. Advances the film manually. Each click a piece of evidence preserved. Then she carefully returns everything to the cases exactly as she found it. Any indication that she has discovered the cache means Hale will activate contingency plans. Better for him to think she is still operating blind. She needs confirmation, needs to hear Hale admit what he has done, needs him to provide enough information that she can understand the full operation before deciding whether to disrupt it or escape it or burn it down completely. She pulls out the satellite phone from the second case, powers it on. The encryption takes 30 seconds to initialize. When it is ready, she dials the number listed on the orders, the number that is supposed to be her handler contact. It rings twice, then a voice she has not heard in 4 years. Corwin, I wondered when you would call. Hale's voice has not changed, still has that West Texas drawl, that makes every statement sound like it is being delivered from a rocking chair on a front porch. Deceptive, that voice. Makes you think you are talking to someone's grandfather instead of a man who has planned operations that turn cities into graveyards. "I found your orders," Corwin says. Her voice is steady. She is proud of that. "I found what you have been doing to me." Silence on the line, not awkward silence, calculating silence. Hale is thinking, deciding how much truth to deploy and how much to keep in reserve. "Found them where?" Hale asked finally. "In the cave, the cache. You knew about it." "Sarah, I know about everything. That is my job." She processes that. Hale knew she was maintaining an off-book supply cache. Knew and did not interfere, which means either he approved or he was using it for his own purposes. Probably both. "The pharmaceutical protocol," she says. "How long?" 6 months, since you arrived at Sentinel. 6 months of being drugged and programmed and used. 6 months of carrying out missions she does not remember. 6 months of being a tool instead of a person. Why? The question comes out harder than she intended. Why me? Why this way? Because conscious operators hesitate, Sarah. You know that. You hesitated in Syria. You hesitated in Yemen. Every time you had a clean shot on a target that tactical intel said was valid, you hesitated because your moral compass got involved. "I hesitated because I am not a psychopath." Hale chuckles. "It is not a warm sound. No, you are not. That is exactly why you are valuable. Psychopaths do not have the emotional intelligence to read situations, do not have the human insight to predict behavior. You do, but your conscience got in the way of execution. So you removed my conscience. I removed your memory of receiving orders." Different thing. You still made every decision out there, Sarah. You still chose where to aim. You still chose when to fire. I just made sure you were not spending 3 hours beforehand debating the ethics. Corwin closes her eyes. Her hand tightens on the satellite phone hard enough that the plastic creaks. "Today's attack on Sentinel. You knew it was coming." Statement, not question. Hale's pause is answer enough. Then, yes, you let it happen. You kept Viper 6 away so the base would be vulnerable. "Sarah, listen to me very carefully. What happened today was part of an operation 6 months in planning. We needed Sentinel attacked. We needed it to look organic. We needed the insurgent cell to commit resources to an assault they thought they planned. Why? Because 3 clicks east of that firefight, while 30 insurgents were dying at Sentinel, a Black Hawk was landing at a compound we have been watching for 8 months. That compound held 3 American contractors who have been captive since February. The insurgent leadership was supposed to be at that compound, but we fed them intelligence through back channels suggesting Sentinel was undermanned and vulnerable. They took the bait, committed their leadership and their heavy weapons to hitting the base. Corwin's mind races through the implications. While the insurgent commanders were dying outside Sentinel, their compound was undefended, easy extraction, clean rescue, no hostage negotiation, no ransom payment, no political complications. You sacrificed Sentinel as a distraction. I used Sentinel as an economy of force operation. And nobody died, Sarah, because you provided overwatch, just like the orders specified. 2 people died, Corwin says, her voice is ice. PFC Martinez, Sergeant Chen. I saw them go down before I could get into position. Hale's silence is longer this time. When he speaks again, the drawl is gone. Voice is pure command authority. 2 casualties versus 3 dead hostages and a political crisis that would have dominated news cycles for months. Do the math, Sarah. You were a ranger. You understand triage. I understand that you turned me into a weapon without my consent. I turned you back into what you were always supposed to be. You did not leave the Rangers because you could not shoot anymore. You left because you could not handle the weight of deciding who deserves to die. I took that weight off you, made you operational again. You should be thanking me. Corwin laughs. It comes out bitter. Thank you for drugging me. Thank you for using me. Thank you for making me kill 14 people today without knowing why. 14 insurgents who are about to overrun an American base. You want me to apologize for that? I want you to tell me what happens now that I know. Now that the protocol is broken. Hale takes a breath. She can hear it over the encrypted line. The sound of a man making a decision he does not particularly want to make. Now you have a choice, Sarah. You can come back in. Work for me knowingly instead of unknowingly. We have 4 more operations queued up that need someone with your specific skill set. Or you can walk away. Take that cash you have been hoarding in the cave. Disappear. I will mark you as retired and no one will come looking. And option 3? Because there is always an option 3 with you. Option 3 is you try to go public. Tell people about deception protocol. Show them the documents. Become a whistleblower. He pauses. She can hear the smile in his voice. That option ends with you in federal custody facing charges of treason, theft of classified materials, and 14 counts of murder. Because those insurgents you shot, officially they do not exist. Officially there was no attack on Sentinel today. Officially you are a mentally unstable former operator who stole weapons and went on a killing spree. You would burn the whole operation to cover your tracks. Sarah, I would burn a continent if that is what the mission required. You know that about me. You have always known that. She does know it. That is the hell of it. Hale is exactly who he has always been. Brilliant tactician, ruthless executor. The kind of officer who wins wars while better men argue about ethics. The kind of officer she used to respect. Maybe still respects, in the part of her brain that thinks in terms of tactical efficiency instead of human cost. I need time, she says. You have 24 hours. After that, I need an answer. And Sarah, do not try to run. You have seen what happens to operators who run from Greystone. We always find them. Always. The line goes dead. Corwin sits in the cave with a sat phone in one hand and her future in the other. Both feel equally unstable. 24 hours to decide. Come back in and become a knowing participant in operations that sacrifice Americans for strategic objectives. Walk away and spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. Or go public and get destroyed by the same system she spent 7 years serving. Bad options, worse options, no good options. Story of her life, really. She powers down the sat phone, secures the cases, but does not leave the cave yet. Needs to think, to plan, to understand what resources she has and what moves are available. The film camera has 36 exposures. She has used 20 documenting Hale's orders. 16 exposures left. She photographs the pharmaceutical protocols, the dosing schedules, the administration logs with Martinez's handwriting. Evidence. Not enough to convict in a court of law, but enough to raise questions, enough to start investigations, enough to make Hale's operation visible to people who have the authority to shut it down. If she can get the film to the right people, if she can survive long enough to testify, if a dozen other conditions that depend on variables she cannot control, she secures the camera in her pack, exits the cave the way she came in. Outside, the sun is starting its descent toward the western ridges. Golden hour, the light that makes even ugly things look beautiful for a little while. Sentinel is still chaos, but it is organized chaos now. The kind that happens when training overcomes panic and people remember they are professionals. Corwin needs to get back to the base without raising questions, needs to blend back into the background, needs to become invisible again. She is halfway to the perimeter when she hears the helicopters. 2 Blackhawks coming in low and fast from the northeast. Not the lumbering approach of routine supply runs. The aggressive angle of tactical insertion. They flare over the landing pad. Doors open before the skids touch ground. Troops dismount in textbook formation. Not regular infantry. These move like operators, special operations. The kind who do not get sent unless something important is happening. Leading them is a woman Corwin recognizes from briefing photos. Lieutenant Maya Shelton, Viper 6's intelligence officer. The one who was examining bullet holes in disabled Humvees 3 hours ago. Shelton is back, and she brought friends. The second helicopter disgorges more personnel. Technical specialists, communications experts, someone with a forensics kit. This is not a routine investigation. This is a full-spectrum intelligence collection operation. Corwin melts back into the tree line, watches from concealment. Shelton is talking to Captain Vasquez, pointing at the eastern perimeter where the insurgent attack came from, pointing at the ridgeline where Corwin's firing position was, pointing at specific impact craters from mortar rounds. Shelton is not just investigating, she is reconstructing, building a timeline, identifying patterns. And Shelton is very good at identifying patterns. Corwin watches as Shelton deploys her team. 2 specialists head to the ridgeline with metal detectors and evidence collection bags, looking for brass casings, looking for any physical evidence of the sniper who saved the base. 3 more specialists set up at the eastern perimeter, documenting the insurgent attack positions, collecting spent ammunition, photographing vehicle tracks. Shelton herself moves to the disabled Humvees from this morning's ambush, examines the bullet holes again, takes measurements, runs calculations on her tablet. She is connecting the dots. Morning ambush, Afternoon-based defense. Same shooter, same tactics, same precision. Corwin needs to establish an alibi. Needs to be somewhere visible with witnesses who can testify she was not on that ridgeline with a rifle. She circles wide around the base perimeter, uses the destroyed sections of fence as entry points, moves between buildings like she belongs there, because she does belong there, has quarters, has a job, has a cover story that will hold up to casual scrutiny. The question is whether Shelton's scrutiny will be casual. Supply Depot 7 is untouched by the fighting. Wrong side of the base. Wrong tactical value. Nobody wastes ammunition shooting at buildings full of paperwork and spare parts. Corwin enters through the side door, moves to her small office, sits at her desk, boots up the computer like she has been here all day. The screen shows her inventory management software. Last entry, this morning at 0530, right before she left to intercept Viper 6. She creates new entries, backdates them, makes it look like she has been working through the case, processing requisitions, updating databases, being exactly the kind of dedicated supply clerk who ignores explosions and gunfire to keep the paperwork flowing. The falsified records will not survive detailed forensic analysis, but they might survive casual inspection. Might buy her time to decide what to do next. The door opens. Lieutenant Shelton enters without knocking. Behind her, Commander Briggs and a man Corwin does not recognize. Older, maybe 50. Civilian clothes, but military bearing. The kind of bearing that comes from 3 decades of giving orders and having them followed. Behind them, 2 armed personnel, not threatening, just present, making it clear this is official and serious. Specialist Corwin, Shelton says. Her voice is professionally neutral, the kind of neutral that means suspicion is simmering underneath. Ma'am, Corwin replies, does not stand. Supply personnel do not jump to attention for lieutenants. Staying seated is what is expected. Where were you during the attack? Corwin gestures at her quarters, the door visible through the office window. Sleeping. Night shift inventory ran long. I was off duty. Shelton nods slowly. And you did not hear the explosions? The gunfire? Corwin taps her ear. Earplugs. Barracks are loud. Half the guys snore like chainsaws. The older man speaks for the first time, voice like gravel in a blender. You did not think to respond when your base came under attack? I am supply, Corwin says. She lets a little irritation show. Appropriate amount for someone being questioned about doing exactly what they are supposed to do. I do not have a combat MOS. I have an inventory system and a logistics database. What was I supposed to do? Throw ammunition at them? The man almost smiles, almost. Name is Briggs, Commander Briggs. I run Viper 6. Corwin knows exactly who he is. Read his personnel file 3 months ago. When she was conducting surveillance operations, she does not remember. But she makes her face show polite recognition instead of complete familiarity. Sir, she says, heard your patrol got hit today too. Briggs studies her face. She lets him look, keeps her expression open and unconcerned. Let him see a supply clerk who is mildly annoyed at being questioned, but not worried because why would she be worried? Yeah, Briggs says slowly. We got hit. Sniper took out 2 of our vehicles. Professional work, very professional. Shelton pulls out an evidence bag. Inside, a single brass casing, 300 Winchester Magnum, match grade. The kind that costs $3 per round and delivers precision measured in fractions of an inch. Found this on the ridge, Shelton says, where someone provided fire support during the attack. Someone who saved a lot of lives today. She sets the casing on Corwin's desk, watches Corwin's face. Corwin picks it up, examines it like she has never seen ammunition before, which is laughable given that she processes ammunition requisitions 40 hours a week. But supply clerks do not typically know the difference between match grade and standard issue by looking at a spent casing. Looks expensive, Corwin says. She sets it back down. You think it was one of ours? Someone from the base? That is what we are trying to determine, Shelton says. This ammunition is not standard issue. It is custom loaded. Probably by the shooter themselves, which suggests advanced training. Probably military, definitely American. Briggs leans against the doorframe, casual posture, but his eyes are doing tactical assessment, reading body language, looking for tells. Here's what is interesting. Specialist, he says. Whoever shot at my convoy used the same ammunition. Same lot number, actually. We can tell from the brass composition. Corwin lets her eyebrows rise. So the same person who disabled your vehicles also saved the base? Looks that way, Briggs agrees. Which raises questions about motive. Why stop us from reaching our objective? Why turn around and save Sentinel? Maybe they knew something you did not, Corwin suggests. Maybe the mission intel was bad, and they were trying to keep you out of a trap. Shelton and Briggs exchange glances. The kind of glance that suggests Corwin just said something they have already been discussing. That is one theory, Shelton says carefully. Another theory is that someone needed us away from the base so it would be vulnerable. But that same someone could not stomach letting Americans die, so they provided Overwatch. Complicated theory, Corwin says. She keeps her voice level. Lot of moving parts. Complicated operation, Briggs counters. Lot of moving parts. The kind of operation that requires someone with advanced tactical training, intimate knowledge of this base's defensive weaknesses, and access to equipment that is not on any official inventory. He lets that hang in the air for a moment. You would not know anything about that, would you, Specialist? Corwin meets his eyes, holds the contact. No nervousness, no defiance, just the mild confusion of someone who has no idea why they are being interrogated. Sir, I count bullets. I do not fire them. Have not qualified on a rifle in 4 years. Pretty sure I would fail basic marksmanship at this point. When did you transfer to supply? Shelton asks. The question sounds casual. Is not. 4 years ago, after my contract with the Rangers ended. Rangers, Briggs repeats. What was your MOS there? 92 Yankee, unit supply specialist, same as now. Shelton pulls out a tablet, scrolls through something, frowns. That is what your current records say. But there is a gap, 16 months between when you left Ranger Regiment and when you showed up in supply chain. What were you doing? Corwin had prepared for this question years ago, has an answer ready that is boring enough to be believable. Medical leave, knee surgery, recovery, physical therapy. Decided I did not want to jump out of airplanes anymore if my knee was going to give out on landing. Shelton makes a note. We will need to verify that. Talk to Walter Reed, Corwin says. They have got all my records. They do have records, carefully constructed records, the kind that cost Hale a lot of favors to put in place. Records that will hold up to standard verification, but not to the kind of deep investigation that involves calls to doctors and review of surgical photos. Corwin is betting Shelton will not go that deep. Not yet, not without more evidence. But the bet feels less certain when Shelton looks up from her tablet with an expression that suggests she knows something Corwin does not. Actually, Specialist, we already contacted Walter Reed this afternoon, as soon as we identified you as a person of interest. Corwin's stomach drops. She keeps her face neutral through sheer force of will. And, she asks, voice steady, give nothing away. And they have no record of your knee surgery, Shelton says. No admission records, no surgical notes, no physical therapy logs. The orthopedic surgeon you listed does not work there. Never has. She swipes to another screen on her tablet. What they do have is a classified note in your file, dated 4 years ago, says you transferred to a special access program. Duration, 16 months. Details, redacted. Personnel contacted for verification. Colonel David Hale, JSOC, Special Operations. She looks up, meets Corwin's eyes. We called Colonel Hale. He confirmed you were in his unit, declined to provide details due to classification. But he did say something interesting. He said if we had questions about your recent activities, we should ask you directly. Said you would know what to tell us. The room goes very quiet. The armed personnel shifts slightly. Not aggressive, just ready. Corwin has decisions to make. Fast decisions. Hale has thrown her to the wolves, has confirmed she is special operations without providing any cover story. Has essentially told Shelton that Corwin is exactly what they suspect she is. Question is why? Why expose her now? What does Hale gain by having Corwin interrogated by Viper 6? Unless this is a test, unless Hale is using Shelton to determine whether Corwin can be trusted, whether she will maintain operational security under pressure or break and expose Greystone, or unless Hale has decided Corwin is compromised and is using Shelton to neutralize her without getting his own hands dirty. No good options, only less bad ones. Corwin stands, slowly, hands visible, not threatening. I need to make a phone call, she says. To who? Briggs asks. To my lawyer, Corwin says. Because this conversation just became an interrogation, and I am not stupid enough to continue without representation. Shelton's expression does not change. You are not under arrest, Specialist. You are free to leave at any time. We are just trying to understand what happened today. Then you will understand if I decline to answer further questions without counsel present, Corwin says. Standard procedure, which you know, Lieutenant. Briggs and Shelton exchange another glance, some unspoken communication. Then Briggs nods. Fair enough, he says. We will schedule a formal interview. Tomorrow morning, 0900. You can have counsel present if you want. He heads for the door, pauses, looks back. One more thing, Specialist. The weapons locker in this depot, K-7. Someone cut the chain last night. Removed an M2010 rifle. Serial number matches a rifle that should have been turned in for destruction 3 years ago. He lets that sink in. You are the custodian of that locker. You want to tell me what happened to that rifle? Corwin does not blink. Someone cut the chain. Sounds like a security breach. I will file a report first thing in the morning. Make sure the investigators have all the documentation they need. Briggs almost smiles. You do that, Specialist. After they leave, Corwin sits motionless at her desk for 5 full minutes, listening, making sure they are actually gone and not waiting in the hallway to see what she does next. When she is certain she is alone, she allows herself one long exhale. Her hands are shaking slightly, adrenaline finding its way out of her system. That was close. Too close. Shelton is smart. Briggs is experienced. They are asking the right questions, following the right logic. It is only a matter of time before they connect enough dots to form a picture. And when that picture comes into focus, it is going to have Sarah Corwin's face in the center. She needs to move up her timeline. 24 hours to decide is now down to maybe 12 before Shelton gets verification back from Hale and realizes the medical records have inconsistencies that cannot be explained by clerical errors. 12 hours to choose between bad options. She is still thinking about it when the power goes out. Not just her building, the whole base. Emergency lighting kicks on after a 3-second delay. Red bulbs, dim, meant to preserve night vision, not to actually illuminate anything useful. Outside, voices shouting. Not panic, controlled urgency. Something is happening. Corwin moves to the window, sees personnel mobilizing, sees Briggs and Shelton running toward the TOC, sees the duty officer sprinting to the communications building. Whatever is happening, it is not local. It is coming from outside. She exits the depot, blends into the movement of personnel responding to whatever crisis is unfolding. Nobody questions her presence. Chaos is excellent cover. The TOC is running on generator power. Inside, controlled pandemonium. Radios crackling, officers barking orders, someone trying to get satellite uplink reestablished. Captain Vasquez is at the center of it, phone pressed to her ear. Her face has gone pale. Say again, she is saying, her voice is tight. How many? Pause, she listens. Her jaw clenches. Understood. We will mobilize what we have. ETA 40 minutes. She hangs up, turns to the assembled personnel. Listen up. We just got a flash traffic from JSOC. There is a situation developing 40 clicks northeast. A patrol from Fort Campbell stumbled into something big. They are pinned down, taking casualties, requesting immediate QRF. Quick reaction force. The emergency response for when American troops are in trouble, and every second counts. Briggs steps forward. Ma'am, Viper 6 can be wheels up in 10 minutes. Vasquez shakes her head. You are down 2 vehicles and you have been operating for 14 hours. I need you rested for tomorrow's patrol schedule. Then who? Briggs demands. We do not have another combat unit on base. We do not, Vasquez agrees. But Fort Campbell is sending a relief force. They will be here in 2 hours to stage through our location. Our job is to prep supplies and make sure they have everything they need for immediate deployment. 2 hours, someone mutters. A lot can happen in 2 hours. Vasquez's expression says she knows that. Knows it intimately. But she is base commander, not field commander. She works with assets she has, not assets she wishes she had. Prep the vehicles, she orders. Full combat load, fuel, ammo, medical. I want them rolling the second Campbell's people arrive. The TOC empties as personnel scatter to execute orders. Corwin hangs back, thinking. 40 clicks northeast. That is rough terrain, mountain passes, limited roads. If a patrol is pinned down out there, they are in serious trouble. 2 hours for relief to arrive. 2 hours for wounded soldiers to bleed out. 2 hours for tactical situations to deteriorate from bad to catastrophic. She thinks about the 14 insurgents she killed today. Thinks about the weight of those bodies added to all the others over the years. Thinks about whether adding more weight changes anything or just makes the burden heavier. Thinks about what Hale said. about how he removed her conscience so she could operate without hesitation. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe the hesitation is the important part. Maybe the moment you stop hesitating is the moment you stop being human and start being a weapon. But weapons do not get to choose their targets. Humans do. Sarah Corwin walks out of the TOC, walks past the mobilizing personnel, walks past the vehicles being loaded, walks straight to Supply Depot 7 and the cave beyond where her real equipment is hidden. She has got 40 clicks to cover in under 2 hours, on foot, through terrain that will fight her every step. But she has done harder things, survived worse odds. And somewhere out there, Americans are dying, while everyone waits for official relief to arrive through official channels following official procedures. Sarah Corwin stopped following official procedures the moment she pulled the trigger this morning. No reason to start again now. She moves through this darkness toward the cave, toward her rifle, toward whatever comes next. Behind her, Sentinel prepares for a rescue that will arrive too late. Ahead of her, soldiers die, while she decides if saving them is worth revealing herself. The question is not whether she can reach them in time. The question is whether reaching them means becoming exactly what Hale wants her to be. A weapon without conscience, an operator without hesitation, a ghost that kills on command and disappears before anyone can say thank you or ask questions. She reaches the cave, retrieves her rifle, loads fresh magazines, and realizes she already knows the answer. She has been a weapon, been an operator, been a ghost. Time to find out if she can be something else. Time to find out if you can carry the weight of bodies and still walk upright. Time to move. The mountain darkness swallows her whole. 40 clicks away, Americans are dying. Sarah Corwin has 2 hours to make sure they do not. The math is brutal. The choice is clear. She runs 40 kilometers through Appalachian darkness. 2 hours to cover ground that would take a regular infantry squad 6 hours in daylight. Sarah Corwin has covered impossible distances before. Tonight she will do it again or die trying. The difference is that 4 years ago she was running toward objectives that made sense. Orders from commanders she trusted. Missions with clear parameters and acceptable risk calculations. Tonight she is running toward a crisis that might not even be real. Toward soldiers who might already be dead. Toward a choice that will define who she is when the running stops. The rifle weighs heavy across her back, not from physics, from memory. 14 bodies today. How many more tonight? She pushes the thought away, focuses on breathing, on footwork, on the rhythm that turns running into meditation and meditation into survival. The terrain fights her, always does. Roots grab at boots, streams hide under leaf cover. Slopes that look manageable in daylight become ankle breakers in darkness. But Corwin has night vision and training and the kind of conditioning that comes from refusing to quit even when your body is screaming that quitting is the only rational choice. She covers the first 10 kilometers in 40 minutes. Good pace. Sustainable. The kind of speed that will get her there with enough energy left to actually matter when she arrives. At the 12-kilometer mark, she stops. Listens. Something wrong, cannot identify what. Just wrong. She kills her movement, becomes statue still, lets the forest settle around her, lets her hearing separate natural sounds from unnatural ones. There, southeast, maybe 300 meters, the sound of diesel engines idling, voices speaking a language that is not English. Corwin goes prone. Low crawls to a position with clear sightline. Pulls out her night vision binocular. Scans. 2 trucks. Technical type. Machine guns mounted. 8 fighters visible. Could be more inside the vehicles. They are staged at a choke point, the only pass through this section of mountains. Waiting. Waiting for what? For who? The Fort Campbell patrol that is supposedly pinned down 40 clicks northeast would have to come through here on their relief route, which means these fighters are not random. They are positioned, prepared. This is an ambush site. Corwin's tactical brain runs the calculation. 8 fighters minimum, possibly 12. Heavy weapons, prepared positions, against a relief column that will be moving fast, focused on reaching the pinned down patrol, not expecting contact along the route. The relief force will drive straight into this, take casualties, get delayed or destroyed. Meanwhile, the patrol they are trying to rescue bleeds out waiting for help that never arrives. Unless someone removes the ambush first. Corwin checks her ammunition. 20 rounds in the rifle, 40 more in her pack, against 12 fighters with machine guns and prepared positions. Math does not work, not for a solo operator. But math changes when you have surprise and elevation and training that costs the taxpayers about $500,000 to install in your nervous system. She moves upslope, finds high ground overlooking the ambush site. Range, 400 meters. Perfect. Close enough for accuracy, far enough for safety. Sets up prone. Bipod deployed. Scope adjusted for night vision conditions. Breathing controlled. Heart rate dropping into that meditative space where time stretches and the world narrows to crosshairs and calculations. First target, the machine gunner on the lead truck. The biggest threat. The one who will do the most damage if this goes loud before she can shift the tactical balance. She settles the crosshairs, exhales slowly, begins the squeeze, then stops because something Hale said is echoing in her mind about how he removed her memory so she could operate without hesitation, about how hesitation is weakness, about how weapons do not question orders. And Sarah Corwin is tired of being a weapon. She shifts her aim, not the machine gunner, the truck's front tire. Same trick she used this morning on Viper 6. Disable without killing, stop without slaughter. The rifle fires. The tire explodes, the truck lurches sideways. Chaos erupts in the ambush site, fighters scrambling for weapons, shouting, trying to locate the shooter. Corwin is already moving. Fire and vanish. 30 meters displacement in 20 seconds. New position, new angle. Second shot, fuel tank on the second truck. Not an explosion, just a leak. But a leaking truck is a useless truck. She has got their attention now. Muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness as they return fire at where they think she is, where she was 30 seconds ago. Amateur hour. Professional snipers do not shoot at ghosts. Third shot, the radio antenna. Snaps it clean off. Now they cannot call for reinforcements. Cannot coordinate, cannot do anything except react to a threat they cannot see and cannot fight. Fourth shot goes high and wide. Intentional miss that cracks through branches above their heads. Makes them think she is repositioning. Makes them waste ammunition shooting at shadows. She watches through her scope as they make the decision. Smart decision. Tactically. Bad situation getting worse. Unknown sniper with superior position. 2 vehicles disabled. No communications. Better to withdraw and live to fight another day than die here accomplishing nothing. They mount up in whatever vehicles still run. Pull back east into terrain where a lone sniper cannot follow. The ambush site goes quiet, empty. Corwin secures her position, waits 20 minutes to make sure they are actually gone and not staging a counter ambush. When she is satisfied, she moves down to the site, checks the vehicles, finds equipment, weapons, ammunition, maps with markings showing not just this position, but 3 others along the likely relief route. This was not random. This was coordinated, planned. Someone knew the Fort Campbell patrol was in trouble, knew relief would come, knew the route they would take, set up multiple ambush points to bleed the rescue force before they could reach the objective. Someone with access to American tactical planning. Someone with detailed knowledge of how relief operations get executed. Someone inside the system. The pieces click together in Corwin's mind like a rifle bolt sliding home. The certainty is absolute and terrible. This is another Greystone operation. Another layer of whatever game Hale is playing. The pinned down patrol, the relief force, the ambushes, all of it orchestrated. And Sarah Corwin just disrupted it by removing one of the ambush sites. Her satellite phone vibrates. She pulls it out. Text message from a number she does not recognize. Stop interfering. Final warning. Not from Hale. Different number. Which means Greystone has multiple handlers, multiple watchers, multiple people who can make operators disappear when they stop being useful. Corwin stares at the message, then at the abandoned ambush site, then at the mountains stretching away into darkness. She has got a choice here. Turn back, return to Sentinel, pretend she was never here. Let whatever is going to happen without her fingerprints on it. Or keep moving, keep interfering, keep choosing to be human instead of weapon, even if being human gets her killed. She deletes the message, pockets the phone, starts running again. 28 kilometers to go, 90 minutes left. And somewhere ahead, soldiers are dying in a trap that someone designed specifically to produce corpses and political leverage. The next ambush site is easier to find because she knows what to look for now. Same pattern, same setup, choke point control, heavy weapons, waiting for targets that will never arrive if Corwin has anything to say about it. 6 fighters this time. Maybe they are spreading their forces thinner. Maybe the first ambush site was supposed to be the primary kill zone, and these secondary sites are just insurance. Either way, they are about to have a very bad night. Corwin does not waste time with fancy tactics. She has a schedule to keep. 40 clicks in 2 hours means she cannot afford to be subtle. 3 shots. 3 engine blocks destroyed from 600 meters out. The technical trucks die with mechanical finality. No mobility equals no ambush capability. No mobility equals no. The fighters do not even try to engage. They see their vehicles disabled by an invisible shooter and make the rational choice. Abandon the site, melt into terrain they know better than any American ever will. Survive to fight another day. Smart men making smart choices. Corwin is back to running before they are fully withdrawn. Does not even slow down. Just keeps moving northeast toward whatever is actually happening at the coordinates where a patrol is supposedly pinned down. Third ambush site, same pattern, same result. These fighters are not committed enough to die for whatever they are being paid. When their equipment gets destroyed by an invisible shooter, they cut losses and withdraw. Professional work. Clean work. The kind that saves lives on both sides. But Corwin is under no illusions that what she is doing is purely humanitarian. Every ambush she disrupts is a piece of Hale's operation she is destroying. Every fighter she sends running is evidence that Greystone's plan is coming apart. And when operations come apart, operators who cause the disruption tend to have very short life expectancies. She has got maybe 6 hours before Hale realizes the ambush has failed. Maybe 12 before he figures out Corwin is responsible. Maybe 24 before Greystone assets start hunting her in earnest. Better make those hours count. The terrain changes as she gets closer to the objective area. Less forest, more rock. Open ground that provides excellent fields of fire and terrible concealment. The kind of ground where you get pinned down and die slowly while waiting for help. She approaches from the west, the direction nobody is watching because the relief force is supposed to come from the south, finds high ground, gets her rifle into position, scans the objective area through her scope. What she sees makes her blood freeze. There is a patrol down there. Americans, 4 of them, in defensive positions behind rocks and disabled vehicles, taking sporadic fire from insurgent positions in the surrounding heights. But the fire is sporadic for a reason. The insurgents are not trying to kill them. They are keeping them pinned, keeping them scared, keeping them calling for help on radios that are definitely working because this whole thing is theater. This whole thing is bait. The patrol is not in actual danger. They are in carefully managed danger. Enough to justify a relief force, enough to commit resources, enough to draw American units into ambush sites along the relief route. And when the relief force gets chewed up in those ambushes, when American casualties mount because someone leaked the relief route to insurgent cells, there will be political consequences, congressional hearings, media coverage, pressure to withdraw, pressure to negotiate. Someone wants Americans to leave this region. Someone with enough access to operational planning to turn military operations into political weapons. Someone who understands that you do not win modern wars with body counts. You win them with narratives and cable news coverage and senators demanding answers about why Americans keep dying in conflicts nobody can explain anymore. Corwin is looking at a false flag operation. Americans attacking Americans. Greystone using insurgent proxies to create casualties that will shift political calculations back in Washington. The question is why? What is valuable enough in this region to justify sacrificing American soldiers? What is Hale actually protecting? She is still trying to work it out when her phone vibrates again. Different number. When she answers, Hale's voice is ice. Corwin, where are you? She does not answer. Let him tell her what he knows. Let him reveal how good his surveillance actually is. I know you left Sentinel, Hale continues. I know you disrupted 3 ambush sites. I know you are on the ridge overlooking the bait patrol right now. What I do not know is why you are making this harder than it needs to be. Because soldiers are dying, Corwin says. Real soldiers, not chess pieces. Those ambushes would have produced 17 casualties, Hale says. His voice is steady, clinical. 17 wounded, 3 critical, 0 dead. Do you know how hard it is to calibrate violence to produce exactly that result? How much planning goes into making something look catastrophic while keeping it survivable? You are creating casualties to influence policy. I am creating political pressure to force withdrawal from a region we have no business operating in, Hale corrects. There is a lithium deposit 40 kilometers east of your current position. Largest untapped reserve in North America, worth approximately $80 billion. Three mining corporations and two foreign governments are competing for extraction rights. The current administration is considering a deal that would give extraction to a Chinese consortium in exchange for debt relief. Corwin processes that. Lithium, the metal that powers batteries. Electric vehicles. The future of energy storage, $80 billion worth. Strategic resource. Whoever controls it controls the next generation of energy infrastructure. Controls leverage over nations transitioning away from oil. Controls the geopolitical landscape for the next 50 years. And you want to stop that deal. I want to make this region so politically toxic that no administration will touch it for a decade, Hale says. By then, American corporations will have positioned themselves better. We'll have the political leverage to demand better terms. We'll have the strategic relationships to ensure that resource benefits American interests instead of Chinese ones. He pauses. Lets that sink in. This is not about today, Sarah. This is about 20 years from now, when lithium prices quadruple, and whoever controls these deposits controls the global economy. This is not about soldiers. This is about nations. This is about ensuring America remains strategically competitive in a world where energy dominance determines everything else. So you are killing Americans to protect corporate profits. Hale's laugh is bitter. I am sacrificing 17 casualties to prevent economic colonization. I am trading short-term pain for long-term sovereignty. You were a ranger, Sarah. You know the job is not about saving individuals. It is about protecting the nation. Corwin feels something hardening in her chest. The same thing that hardened 4 years ago when she realized the job was eating her humanity piece by piece. The same thing that made her transfer to supply and try to become invisible. Who decides, she asks? Who decides that 17 casualties is acceptable? That 3 critical wounds are worth $80 billion in lithium? That American blood is an acceptable currency for trading away strategic resources to the highest bidder? Someone has to decide, Hale says. Someone has to look at the math and make the call. That is what command is, Sarah. That is what leadership means. Making decisions that save the many by sacrificing the few. Ensuring long-term survival by accepting short-term costs. He pauses again. When he speaks next, his voice has changed, softer, almost regretful. That is what you were running from when you transferred out. The weight of making those decisions. The burden of understanding that sometimes good people die so that better outcomes can emerge. I gave you a gift, Sarah. I removed that burden, let you operate without the weight. You turned me into a puppet. I turned you into an effective operator. There is a difference. Corwin closes her eyes, opens them, looks through her scope at the 4 soldiers in the valley below. Young faces, scared faces. Faces that belong to people who joined up thinking they would defend their country and instead became props in a psychological operation designed to manufacture political pressure through carefully calibrated violence. She thinks about the 17 casualties Hale planned, thinks about the 3 critical wounds, thinks about the families who would get folded flags and pension checks and absolutely no explanation for why their sons and daughters died in a war that officially ended 3 administrations ago. Thinks about what it costs to look at that math and call it acceptable. I have a better idea, Corwin says. She hangs up, powers off the phone, removes the battery, throws both pieces in different directions into the darkness. Then she starts shooting. Not at the patrol, not at the insurgents, at the equipment. Her first shot destroys the radio antenna on the patrol's disabled vehicle. Cannot call for help if you do not have communications. Second shot takes out the insurgent commander's radio. Same logic. Third through 8th shots systematically destroy every piece of communications equipment she can identify in the valley. Radios, satellite uplinks, even a laptop that is probably running tactical command software. She is cutting the puppet strings, removing Greystone's ability to manage this theater, forcing both sides to make their own decisions instead of following a script. The valley erupts in confusion, both sides trying to figure out what is happening, who is shooting, why their communications just went dead. Corwin shifts her aim to the insurgent positions, does not shoot the fighters, shoots the ground 3 meters in front of them, kicks up rock and dirt, makes them think they are under attack from an artillery spotter calling in fire missions. They do what any rational person would do when they think artillery's incoming. They run. The patrol watches the insurgents flee, does not understand, does not question. just seizes the opportunity to consolidate their position and prepare for extraction. Corwin is already moving, descending from the ridge, approaching the patrol's position. She has got maybe 20 minutes before the relief force arrives. 20 minutes to have a conversation that will either save lives or end hers. The patrol sees her coming. Weapons come up. Professional response. Unknown person approaching a combat position gets treated as hostile until proven otherwise. Corwin keeps her rifle slung, hands visible, moves slow and obvious. Friendly? She calls out. American, coming in. The patrol leader is a sergeant, maybe 30, face weathered by too many deployments. Eyes that have seen enough to be cautious, but not so much that he has stopped being human. Name tape reads Kowalski. Who the fuck are you, he demands. Weapon still up, finger alongside the trigger, guard, ready but not committed. Corwin stops 10 meters out, close enough to talk, far enough to not threaten. Specialist Sarah Corwin. Out of Sentinel. You are the Campbell Patrol, right? The one that called for relief? Kowalski's eyes narrow. Relief is inbound. Should be here in 30 mics. What are you doing here? Saving your life, Corwin says. Your mission is compromised. The whole thing is a setup. Kowalski does not lower his weapon. His soldiers do not either. 3 of them. Young, tired, scared, but holding it together through training and trust in their sergeant. Explain, Kowalski orders. So Corwin explains. Tells them about Greystone, about Hale, about the ambush sites that were supposed to chew up the relief force, about the lithium deposits and the political calculations and the acceptable casualties. Tells them they are not actually in danger, have not been all day. The insurgent fire was calibrated to keep them scared and calling for help without actually killing them. They are bait, live bait, designed to draw in rescue forces that will take real casualties at carefully planned ambush points. Tells them the relief force was driving into a trap. 3 ambush sites, 17 planned casualties. Political leverage manufactured from American blood to prevent a mining deal that would benefit Chinese corporations over American ones. Kowalski listens. His face does not change much, but something in his eyes shifts. The kind of shift that happens when a soldier realizes the enemy is not who he thought it was. That is insane, he says finally. You are telling me our own command is trying to get us killed? Not killed, Corwin corrects. Wounded, there is a difference. Dead soldiers create martyrs. Wounded soldiers create political pressure. Someone very smart is playing a very long game. Prove it. Corwin pulls out the map she took from the first ambush site, unfolds it, shows the markings, the coordination points, the timing schedules, all written in English with American military map notation. Kowalski studies it, takes his time, runs his finger along the marked ambush positions, checks coordinates against his own map. His jaw tightens. How do I know you did not make this? Could be enemy disinformation. Could be you are working for them. You do not, Corwin admits. You have to decide what you believe. But in about 15 minutes, a relief force is going to come through that southern pass. If I am lying, nothing happens. If I am telling the truth, they drive into an ambush that is specifically designed to produce maximum casualties without triggering a full-scale response. She pauses, lets him process. What do you want us to do? Corwin pulls out a flare gun, emergency signaling device. Standard issue for downed pilots and isolated patrols. Fire this, red flare. That is the signal for mission abort. Tells the relief force to halt and wait for situation assessment. They stop short of the ambush sites. You get extracted by helicopter instead of ground convoy. Nobody drives into a kill zone. Kowalski looks at the flare gun, looks at his soldiers. They are watching him, trusting him to make the call. And if you are lying, if this is some kind of insurgent trick, then you have wasted a flare and your relief gets delayed by 20 minutes while they sort out the confusion. Corwin says, weigh that against the alternative. What is 20 minutes worth if it prevents 17 casualties? One of Kowalski's soldiers speaks up. Young kid, maybe 22. Name tape reads Chen. Sarge, he says. Her story tracks. The fire we have been taking all day. It has been harassment, not serious. Like they wanted us pinned but not dead. Kowalski nods slowly. He has noticed that too. Professional soldiers notice when the enemy is not trying hard enough to kill them. Another soldier, female, maybe 25. Name tape reads Jackson. The insurgents pulled back the second this unknown shooter started engaging, she says. They were not committed, like they were just going through motions. Kowalski studies Corwin's face, searching for deception. searching for truth, searching for whatever tells him whether to trust his gut or follow procedure. You said Greystone, he says finally. JSOC Special Access Program. Black Ops, I have heard rumors, never confirmed, never denied. Just operators who disappear into units that do not exist and conduct missions that never happened. He pauses. You one of them? Corwin meets his eyes. Was, not anymore. Why not? Because I got tired of being used without knowing I was being used. Tired of waking up and not remembering what I did the day before. Tired of finding evidence that I executed operations I have no memory of conducting. She pulls out a photograph. One of the documents from the cave, shows it to Kowalski. This is a pharmaceutical protocol, memory suppression agent. Someone has been dosing me for 6 months, making me execute orders and then forget I received them, turning me into a remote-controlled weapon. Kowalski takes the document, reads it. His expression darkens. Jesus Christ, he mutters. This is MK Ultra level shit. He looks up at Corwin, looks at her really looks, sees the exhaustion, the fear, the determination, the humanity struggling against conditioning and control, makes his decision. He takes the flare gun. If you are wrong about this, he says slowly, if my people get hurt because I trusted you, I will hunt you down personally. Fair, Corwin agrees. Kowalski raises the flare gun, fires. The red star shell arcs into the night sky, hangs there like a dying sun. The signal is clear. Mission abort. Halt advance. Wait for orders. In the distance, Corwin can hear the relief forces vehicles slowing, stopping. Commanders on radios trying to figure out why the patrol just aborted their own rescue. She does not wait to see how it resolves, already moving, heading west, away from the extraction point, away from the explanations and the debriefs and the questions she cannot answer without destroying what is left of her life. Behind her, Kowalski is calling out, wait, we need your statement, need you to testify. Corwin does not stop, just calls back over her shoulder. Some ghosts prefer to stay invisible. She disappears into the darkness before anyone can follow, but she does not get far, maybe 200 meters, because the forest ahead of her erupts with movement. 6 figures, emerging from concealment, moving with tactical precision, weapons raised but not firing. Not insurgents, Americans. Special operations. The patch on their shoulders identifies them as Viper 6. Leading them is Commander Briggs and Lieutenant Shelton. They have been waiting for her. Corwin stops, assesses her options. 6 operators in front, Kowalski's patrol behind. Nowhere to run that does not involve shooting Americans. And she has had enough of shooting Americans for one lifetime. She lowers her rifle, hands visible. Not surrendering, just not escalating. Briggs approaches, weapon lowered but ready. His expression is hard to read. Specialist Corwin, he says, we need to talk. How did you find me? She asks. Shelton steps forward. We put a tracker on your pack. This afternoon, when you were not looking, figured if you were our mystery operator, you would lead us somewhere interesting eventually. She gestures at the valley behind Corwin, where Kowalski's patrol is consolidating. This qualifies as interesting. Briggs glances past Corwin toward the patrol position. The red flare is still burning in the sky, fading but visible. You just aborted a rescue operation, he says. Want to explain why? Because the rescue operation was a trap, Corwin replies. The patrol was bait. The relief force was heading into 3 ambush sites designed to produce 17 casualties. 17 wounded Americans whose suffering would create enough political pressure to force withdrawal from this region. She pulls out the maps, the documents, the evidence she has been collecting, all orchestrated by Greystone, by Colonel Hale, to prevent a lithium mining deal between the current administration and Chinese corporations. $80 billion worth of strategic resources. Hale decided American casualties were an acceptable price to pay for keeping those resources out of Chinese hands. Shelton takes the documents, starts reading. Her expression hardens with each page. This is treason, she says quietly. This is JSOC Special Access Program operations, Corwin counters. Legal gray area, technically authorized at classification levels above congressional oversight. Practically accountable to nobody except whoever signs the operational orders. Briggs studies Corwin's face. You were part of this. You executed missions for Hale. You sabotaged my convoy this morning. Yes. Why? Because Hale programmed me to. Drugged me with memory suppression agents. Made me execute operations without forming memories of executing them. I was a puppet, remote-controlled, activated on command, deactivated without awareness. Shelton looks up from the documents. The pharmaceutical protocols. Jesus. How long? 6 months since I arrived at Sentinel. Briggs processes this. His expression shifts. Not sympathy exactly, understanding. The recognition that Corwin is victim and perpetrator, both. And today, when you broke programming, when you started interfering with Hale's operation, today I decided I was tired of being a weapon, Corwin says. Tired of making decisions I could not remember. Tired of waking up with blood on my hands and no memory of whose blood it is or why it is there. She pauses, looks at both of them. Today I chose to be human instead, even if it kills me, which it probably will. Greystone does not tolerate operators who go rogue. Briggs and Shelton exchange glances, some unspoken communication. Then Briggs nods. Come with us, he says. Back to Sentinel. We will put you in protective custody, get you medical evaluation, document the memory suppression, build a case against Hale and Greystone. Corwin almost laughs. You think Hale will let me testify? You think Greystone will allow investigation into black operations that do not officially exist? Not up to Hale, Shelton says. We go to JSOC, Inspector General, official channels, forced transparency. You are not the first operator Greystone has burned, but you might be the first one willing to testify about it. Corwin thinks about it, thinks about testifying, about exposing Hale, about burning down an operation that treats soldiers like chess pieces. Thinks about the target that puts on her back. What kind of protection can you offer? Briggs pulls out his phone, makes a call, brief conversation, hangs up. Inspector General is authorizing immediate protective custody. You will be transferred to Fort Campbell tonight. Secure facility, armed guards, medical evaluation by independent physicians, legal counsel provided. He pauses. And Hale cannot touch you without admitting Greystone exists, cannot silence you without proving your testimony is accurate. You become untouchable the moment you go on record. Corwin considers, weighs options, calculates odds, realizes she does not have better alternatives. All right, she says, I will testify, but I want immunity, full immunity, for everything I did under Hale's control. Shelton nods, already arranged. Inspector General approved it 10 minutes ago. You are a witness, not a defendant. Everything you did under chemical influence is inadmissible. Corwin lets out a breath she did not know she was holding. The weight on her shoulders does not disappear, but it shifts, becomes something she is carrying with others instead of alone. Then let us go, she says, before Hale figures out where I am and activates whatever contingencies he has in place. They move as a unit. Viper 6 in tactical formation, Corwin in the center, protected, guarded. For the first time in 6 months, not alone. The hike back takes 90 minutes. They link up with the relief force at the southern pass. The force that would have driven into ambushes if Kowalski had not fired that flare. 17 soldiers who will go home tonight without wounds they do not remember receiving. 3 families who will not get phone calls about critical injuries and medical evacuations. 1 operation disrupted. 1 conspiracy exposed. 1 chance at bringing down a system that treats American lives as acceptable losses in geopolitical chess games. Maybe not enough, but something. By the time they reach Sentinel, word has spread. The Inspector General has activated full investigation protocols. Federal agents are inbound. Greystone assets are being identified and isolated. And Colonel David Hale is nowhere to be found. Corwin sits in a secure room at Fort Campbell 12 hours later. Medical evaluation complete. Blood samples confirming presence of XK-791 compound. Testimony recorded, evidence documented. Inspector General agent sits across from her. Middle-aged woman, professional, competent. Name is Thompson. Specialist Corwin, Thompson says. Your testimony has triggered the largest investigation into JSOC special access programs in 20 years. Multiple operations under a review. Multiple operators coming forward with similar stories. Memory suppression, chemical control, unauthorized missions. She pauses. You broke the dam. Everything that comes after is because you chose to stop running. Corwin does not feel heroic, feels tired, feels like someone who made hard choices and will spend the rest of her life wondering if they were the right ones. What happens to Hale, she asks. Hale is gone, Thompson says. Disappeared 6 hours ago. We have assets tracking him. But he is good, very good. Might take time to locate. And Greystone? Being dismantled. Operations suspended, personnel reassigned, programs terminated. It will take months, maybe years, but it is happening. Thompson stands, extends her hand. Thank you, Specialist, for your service, for your courage, for choosing to stand up when standing up meant risking everything. Corwin shakes her hand, does not feel courageous. Feels like someone who got tired of being used and decided to fight back before the using destroyed what little humanity she had left. 3 days later, Sarah Corwin stands on a ridge overlooking Fort Campbell, watching the sun set over mountains that do not care about conspiracies or testimony or operators who break programming. She has got a new assignment: witness protection until Hale is apprehended, new identity being prepared, new life waiting somewhere far from battlefields and black operations. But she is not thinking about the future. She is thinking about the past, about 14 insurgents she killed, about 17 Americans she saved, about 6 months of operations she does not remember and will never fully understand, about the weight that does not go away just because you expose the people who put it there. Lieutenant Shelton finds her on the ridge, stands beside her in silence for a moment. "You did good," Shelton says finally. "Did I?" Corwin asks. 14 people are dead because I pulled a trigger. 17 people are alive because I disrupted an operation. The math does not balance. It never balances. No, Shelton agrees, it does not. But you made the choice. You chose humanity over efficiency. You chose to carry the weight instead of letting someone else carry it for you. She pauses. That is what matters. Not the numbers, the choice. Corwin thinks about that, about choices, about the moment when you stop being a weapon and start being a person again, about whether that transformation is redemption or just a different kind of burden. "I am still carrying it," she says. "The weight, all of it. It does not go away." "No," Shelton says, "it does not. But you are carrying it standing upright. That is more than most people manage." They stand in silence as the sun sets, as darkness settles over the mountains, as the day ends and tomorrow waits with all its uncertainties. Sarah Corwin has been a weapon, has been an operator, has been a ghost executing missions she does not remember. Now she is something else. Witness, survivor, someone who chose to stop running and start fighting back. It does not feel like victory, does not feel like redemption, just feels like the weight shifted position slightly. Became a burden she carries with eyes open instead of eyes closed. Maybe that is enough. Maybe that is all anyone can hope for. To carry the weight, to stay standing, to remain human despite everything trying to make you into something else. Sarah Corwin breathes, watches the sunset, feels the weight on her shoulders. Still carrying it, still standing, still human. For now, that is enough. Behind them, Fort Campbell prepares for tomorrow. Soldiers train, commanders plan. The machinery of military operations grinds forward. Ahead of them, uncertain future. Hale still out there somewhere. Greystone dismantled but not destroyed. Operations suspended but not ended. The work is not finished. Maybe it never will be. But tonight, Sarah Corwin is not a weapon, is not a puppet, is not a ghost disappearing into darkness. Tonight, she is a person who made hard choices and lived to carry their consequences. That will have to be enough. The sun drops below the horizon. Darkness comes. Stars emerge. Sarah Corwin turns away from the ridge, walks toward the lights of Fort Campbell, toward testimony and investigation and all the machinery of accountability grinding slowly into motion. She does not know what comes next, does not know if her testimony will matter, does not know if Hale will be caught or if Greystone will truly fall. But she knows this. She made her choice. She stopped being invisible. She chose humanity over efficiency and consequences over comfort. Some guardians work in daylight, collect medals, get thanked. Others work in darkness, leave no trace, disappear before questions get asked. Sarah Corwin worked in darkness long enough. Time to see what daylight looks like. The weight remains, always will, but she carries it standing upright now. That has to count for something. As a storyteller, this one hit different. Writing Sarah's journey from unknowing weapon to conscious fighter reminded me why these stories matter. We talk about supporting our troops, but what happens when the system treats soldiers as programmable assets instead of human beings? The pharmaceutical mind control isn't science fiction. MK Ultra, Project Artichoke. Declassified programs prove our government experimented on service members without consent. Sarah's story asks the hard question, if it happened before, is it still happening now? I'd love to hear from veterans in the comments. Have you ever felt like parts of your service don't add up? Gaps in memory? Orders that never made sense until years later? You're not alone, and your stories matter. For everyone else, what would you do if you discovered 6 months of your life had been erased? Would you fight the system or disappear? Drop your thoughts below, and if this story resonated with you, there's more where this came from. Hit that subscribe button. Every mission has a story. Let's uncover them together. Your narrator.